I can't believe how crazy but exciting that night alone with my two brothers was. Thinking back about it and not sure when the boundaries came to a stop, maybe it was always there beneath the surface waiting for the perfect chance come to the light. Or maybe it was just something that happened when temptation got in the way. It all started during summer break. That summer was thick and that seemed like it was never going to end. My parents had left for a 2-trip. This was something they did every Saburo to celebrate their anniversary. That left the three of us, me, Dennis, and Kyle, home alone. Dennis, the oldest, had just turned 23. He was the type of guy that was just cool and confident, even without any flirt. Kyle, the youngest, was lightning and the complete opposite. He was reserved and very quiet. He had a gentle demeanor about him and always had his nose in a book. I'm Hillary, the middle child. I'm 2'1" and often saw myself as the mediator, but we mark completely different Uranus. But overall, the three of us got along very well. To be honest, better than my siblings. The first few days of Orprince being gone, he passed by without any major lights. Dennis spent most of his time laying on the couch, scrolling on his phone and flipping through tough channels. Kyle, as I mentioned earlier, had his books to keep him occupied. Occasionally, he'd take a break and get a snack or say something snarky at Dennis. I just did a little bit of everything from chores to looking at magazines to trying not to feel of the quiet house. But by the 4th day, Theberdom had started talking to us. That evening, we sat at the dining table finishing up the last of the Genesis ticket we had ordered. There wasn't much conversation, and it was clear that we're all restless. The three of us were craving some of interesting to do. This house is way too quiet phone, Dennis said as he tossed his chopsticks in his plate. His eyes went back and forth between Kyle and me. Then her said, we need to do something. Something like, what? You're going to throw a party? Kyle asked it sarcastically. Dennis chuckled. That sounds tempting, but no. I was thinking that the three of us should bond. Bond? I asked with a raised eyebrow. What made you think of that? Dennis rolled his eyes at me and said, I'm dead serious. When's the last time all of us just hung out? I don't know, Kyle said. Exactly, Dennis said. So let's do just a thing. Watch a movie, play a game, just whatever. I exchanged glance with Kyle, who seemed as unsure as I felt, but there was something different about Dennis. His usual cockiness was replaced with sincerity, and it was hard to ignore. Fine, let's go in the living room and small thing. I said, great, let's start with a movie. Dennis responded with a smile. We all sprawled onto the couch and Dennis insisted on picking the movie. Of course, it had to be a cheesy action movie that was just ridiculous. Will found ourselves cracking up at Ion. The tension from earlier had all melted away. By the time the movie was over, the mood in the house had shifted. We're all more relaxed and happy. That movie was terrible, I said, still I meant well. Alright, Miss Critic. What do you want to do next? Dennis asked in a joking voice. I thought for a moment and then said, I didn't know. I'm okay, just longing around. So lame, Dennis said. What about you, Kyle? Any ideas? Kyle shook his head and Dennis let out a long dramatic sigh. Well, I guess it'll decide again, he responded with a hint of mischievousness in his eyes. Then, as the evening went on, the atmosphere in the house began to change. It was hard to explain, but there was an indirect shift in the way we interacted with each other. For example, Kyle's glances seemed to linger a little longer than they should have, and Dennis's jokes seemed a little more intense. I wasn't uncomfortable, but it was a little more different than usual. I told myself that it was just my imagination, like the strange feeling in my chest out every time Dennis's arm brushed against mine, or that Kyle's eyes meeting mine was nothing more than their salt of being cooped up in the house for so long. but feeling grew stronger as the night went on. There was sunspot and tension in the air all around us. By the time we decided to call it a night, I just couldn't get rid of the feeling that something had shifted between us. Something unclear but undeniable. As I went upstairs to my room, I looked back over my shoulder at my two brothers who were still in the living room. They were chatting with each other with unreadable expressions in the dim light. I hesitated, getting that strange feeling in my chest again. I shook my head and brushed the thought away as I went into my room. Thought it was nothing, I told myself, but deep down I knew it was. I barely got any sleep that night because I kept replaying the meaning in my head. The latter, the jokes, and the way my brothers had looked at me in certain moments that felt like something more. I kept telling myself it was nothing to worry about, but I kept having the feeling that something had changed. I tried to brush off that feeling the next morning by staying busy with chorus while the guy lounged around. Later on in the afternoon, as I was putting away shiz and the cabinet, Dennis crept into kitchen. Then her said, "Tonight, let's do something fun." I turned around and asked him, "What's our definition of fun?" "Stop being so serious all the time." "Loosen up," he said. I asked him what he had in mind. "Let's play a game," he said with a grin. Kyle then came into the kitchen and asked what sort of game he was talking about. "How about truth or dare?" Dennis answered, "Isn't that a little juvenile?" I asked it as I rolled my eyes. "No, it's not. I have nothing to hide, but I bet you guys won't have the guts to play it properly. So what do you say?" Dennis's cockiness was nothing new, but way Kyle kept gazing at when I looked around made my heart skip a beat. I sensed a bit of a challenge in Heist's expression. "All right, I'm in. But don't get mad if I embarrass you," I said to Dennis with a cuckle. "I'm in too," Kyle said. Dennis grinned. "This is going to be fun," he said. After we ate dinner, we gathered in the living room to start the game. Dennis and I sat on the floor while Kyle sat on the couch. "All right, no avoiding questions and not a kid getting out on dares." Dennis said. He then rubbed his hands together like Aveline and looked at me. "Ladies first, truth or dare," he said. I thought for a minute looking between the two of them. Dennis' expression was full off while Kyle looked more serious. But there was something in High's eyes that made my cheeks get hot. Then I've said, "Truth." Dennis's smile grew wider. "Okay, what's the most embarrassing thing you've detonated in front of a guy you like?" He asked. I buried my face and my hands inside. "Come on, don't be shy," he asked. I took my hands away from my face. "All right. I had a crush on this guy when I was 14, and I walked right into an open locker door while looking back saying, 'Hit him.'" Dennis laughed so hard he was gasping for air. Kylie also laughed and his eyes got watery. "It's your turn now, Dennis. Truth or dare?" I said. "Dare," he said with officiating. I leaned forward and said, "I dare you to put a mom's house dress in to a dance to a song on her workout CD. Seriously, Hegrin." But he didn't back down. He headed it upstairs and was back in a matter of seconds with the purple frilly floral printed dress. He put it on and then turned on the CD player. Mom already had the workout CD in there since it was the last one she dissed. His ridiculous dance moves had Kyle and me cracking up like crazy. After that, he turned off the side player and changed out of the dress. By time, he breathlessly returned to his spot. The mood in the room had changed. There was genuine laughter and real sibling bonding. "Your turn, Kyle. Truth or dare?" Dennis said, "Truth." Kylan's word in a cautious tone of voice. Dennis grinned, then turned devious. "How was your first crush?" he asked Dot. Kyla hesitated and glanced over in my direction. Then he looked away and said, "I'm not doing that." "Come on, that was one off the rules. No avoiding questions," Dennis said. Kyle rubbed his across his chair and said, "Fine, it was a girl in my class." "I'll let that slide this time," Dennis said. The game continued, and the questions Anders got even more tough. By the time I looked, it was my turn again. Okay, Hillary, truth or dare? Dennis said in a cheerful tone. There was some fingles in his voice too, but couldn't quite figure out what it was. I sat for a moment, and my gaze went to Kyle. Ho was watching me carefully. The heaviness of his gaze made my chest tighten. Dare, I said quietly. I knew he'd made a mistake when Dennis's grin grew wicked. I dare you toss it on Kyle's lap for the rest of the game. Thought my stomach was in knots, and I just stared at him, trying to fin the words still protest. No chickening out in dares, remember? He said, still grinning. I looked over at Kyle, expecting him to object to office, but didn't. He was calm and cool about the whole thing. There was also something else in Heist's expression that I couldn't quite figure out. ... It'll be fine. It's just a game after all, Kyle said. My cheeks were burning. I slowly got up and went over to him. When I sat down, his hands didn't know where to go at first. Then they ended up holding onto my hips. His touch sent a fire through me and a shiver down my spine. My heart began beating quickly as Dennis watched with a smirk on his face. Your turn, Kyle. Truth or dare? Dare, he answered, having a tighter grip in my hips. I dare you to give Hira kisses on the cheek. ... The room felt totally silent. My pulse got quicker and I felt like I couldn't breath. I was unsure if I wanted to just let off like a joke, or if I wanted him to follow through with it. Kyle's hands moved around on my hips with a steady and warm touch. I could feel the tension coming from his body. It seemed like he was cracking under that pressure. Then he finally leaned over and gave me a light kiss on the cheek. It was soft and sweet. I felt a jolt of electricity go through me when did it, and I froze. It wasn't just kiss itself. It was the way he did it. Like was kissing someone that wasn't the sister. Like he wasn't just playing a game and doing a dare, but co-confessing something he had been feeling for a long time. My cheek, he swore, overly hot, and me stomach was doing something I just couldn't describe. Dennis laid back and laughed with a satisfied grin on his face. That wasn't so bad, was it? He said. Kyle and Jess looked at each other. He just stared at me like he was trying to figure out my reaction to what had just happened. I tried to speak, but few words wouldn't come out. They froze in my throat. My chest felt heavy and my throat had tightened. All I could do was stare at him. Well, I think it's time for the game toned, Dennis said, and headed separate upstairs. Kyle and I were left alone. The room was except for the hum of the air conditioner. Kyle's hands got tighter on me hips, holding me in place. Can wed for a little bit? He asked with intensity in his eyes. I nodded my head. I need to know if this is just me or if you feel it too, I blurted out. My mind was a mix of emotions when I heard this. I didn't know how to respond, but I knew I should admit the truth. Yes, I feel it too. But that doesn't make it right. I answered quietly. Well, it doesn't actually feel wrong either, he said. The words echoed in mem. I don't know what to do. I admitted you don't have to figure out anything right now. He said gently, I just wanted to know if we were both on the same page. By then, Dennis came back downstairs. I just came down to grab a soda. You guys are still down here? Did it interrupt something? He asked with his usual mischievous grin as he grabbed a soda from the mini fridge. No, we were just talking. I said, are you sure? It looks like something more, he said. Stop joking around. This isn't funny, Kyle said, sternly. Dennis took a sip of his soda and said, who's joking? Then his gaze went to me. A shiver went down my spine as we locked eyes. He had an intensity in his eyes that let me know wasn't king around. So what exactly are you saying? I asked. Dennis set the soda bottle on the bowl and explained. What I'm saying is we all need to stop pretending we don't feel it. You both know what I'm talking about? Anticipation and fear swirled in my chest. I didn't know what to say. Kay looked from him to me and then admitted I had been feeling it too. That's why I look at you the way I do. He said, "This is crazy." I said, "We can't do this." "Why not?" Dennis asked. "No one's going to judge us or stop us. We're alone." My pulse raced and my chest tightened. "Do you want to see where this goes, or do you want to pretend this isn't happening?" Dennis asked me. "I don't know what I want," I whispered. I was afraid to cross a line that couldn't be crossed. But the way they both kept looking at me and impossible for me to walk away, I glanced at the both of them and there was no pressure or judgment coming from them. There was an unspoken understanding that the three of us were in this together. "I don't know how to make sense of this," I said. "You don't have to make sense of it. Just let us help you figure it out." Kyle sagently. Dennis walked over and sat next to Adonis. He held my hand. He said, "We'll follow your lead so you can be comfortable." I stared at the two of them as my thoughts spun out of control. But then something came over me. I didn't want to think of the consequence or the lines we're crossing. I just wanted them. "Okay, I'll do it," I whispered. "That's all I needed to hear," Dennis said with a smile as he squeezed me hand tighter. Kyle also smiled and said, "We'll talk if it is nice and slow." He gave me an intense look and Slide hished up my shoulder with a warm touch. I didn't want to pretend or to fight this anymore. I don't want to give it to monk detail, but I got to a point where I had each one of them in each hand. I constantly switched my attention between the two of them, making sure they were satisfied. Then Dennis is getting to get up. When I did, he turned me around and bent me over. While we were busy, Kyle watched for a moment, but could tell by the way I was looking at him that I wanted him to come over in front of me. He knew what I wanted to do, and it all went fine. I had never done anything like this before, and it didn't feel wrong at all. It felt as if we were all having a phone time. Their touches were gentle, but faded a lot off feeling and meaning to them. And their movements sent a serious self-shivers down my spine after we were done. Wes stayed in the living room for what felt like an eternity. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a very long time. Like I wasn't carrying around a ton of pressure. As the night went on, the reality of how we did set in. It reminded me of a world that could never understand our situation. "We can't stay here like this forever," I said, breaking the silence. "That's true," Kyle said in a steady voice. "But we can just for tonight." All three of us stayed on the couch and slept until sunlight started shining through the curtains. The next morning, Dennis woke up first and we said good morning to each other. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I will be a rep lead." And then he smiled.